Okay, everyone, let's get started. Hello, I'm Shailee Nanavati, and I will be your host today. So, welcome to our fourth webinar in the series Demystifying the Path to Success. So, we bring you industry leaders so you can hear from the top professionals and their path to success. You can find our website with the link in the comments to find out more information about Shape Your Future and for details and registrations for our upcoming series. I interview leaders every Wednesday from 4:30 to 5 Pacific time, so make sure you join us. Now, I am super excited to introduce Lisa Vanacht today. So joining Google in 2007, she has climbed the leadership ladder and is currently the Director of Global Payroll. So Lisa is an expert in finance and volleyball, as she graduated Stanford with her degree in economics while being a USA volleyball athlete for 4 years. From leading a team of finance experts to managing global payroll systems for one of the world's most recognized companies, Lisa is the accounting and finance guru. Lisa, do you mind sharing more about you and your career?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So I took somewhat of an untraditional path, I would say, to my current role. As you mentioned, went to Stanford and graduated in economics and basically did what all my friends were doing, which is I applied for consulting companies. Everyone was either doing investment banking or consulting. And so I jumped in the consulting world. And I kind of did it as just a backup plan because I was planning to play professional volleyball as long as I could, as long as my body held up. And so I interviewed with a few firms and ended up getting an offer that I deferred while I went to the national team for volleyball. And thankfully, I had that fallback plan because I did get injured within kind of a year of post-graduation. And so I ended up taking that role in a niche consulting firm. It was litigation consulting. It's called Navigant Consulting. It still exists. And we were doing a lot of random I would say engagements. Like this was back in 2000 when there was the Y2K scare where everyone was kind of worried that your systems were going to blow up if, once the clock turned to 2000. And so we were doing audits of companies and their readiness plans for that. We were doing a lot of like insurance work. So stuff that I was completely unqualified to work on, frankly. I was just learning on the job and just pushing myself like all of my colleagues. And I did learn a lot about consulting is kind of just selling smart people and not necessarily selling expertise all the time. So that's definitely coming in handy in my current role when we're looking for consultants. Then after a few years of doing that, I decided that I'd rather than be a consultant working with a bunch of different firms, I'd rather be in a firm itself, like working in industry. And so I ended up getting a role at Veritas Software, which also still exists, doing business process reengineering, which I thought sounded really cool and interesting, and it ended up being amazing. So it's a field I would highly recommend to folks who are just starting out, because you get to basically learn everything you can about certain processes and what are the pain points and the bottlenecks, and then you get to redesign them. And ultimately what we were doing is sort of parlaying all that work into a massive systems implementation with a new like Oracle ERP platform. And so I got really into systems implementations, and I found out that was kind of my passion. I loved playing the intermediary role between kind of the business users and the IT folks that were actually kind of building and configuring the systems and helping define requirements and translate those into technical specs and helping facilitate test events and getting the business ready for these massive change programs. So after doing that for a few years, I stumbled upon a posting at Google that basically looked like my resume. It was all about business process reengineering, systems, program management, et cetera, everything I'd been doing. And so I took a chance. I'd heard a lot of good things about Google. This is back in 2006, probably, before everyone knew that Google is such a great place to work. But I had heard rumors that it was a great place, and made that jump to a team called Finance Strategy and Development. It was basically a program management office that supported any of the teams in finance that needed project management support. And pretty much every team needed it at that point in time because Google was very lean, particularly in finance. They just had enough people to kind of keep the lights on. And so we were in high demand. And one of the first projects I got put on was payroll was kind of on fire, putting it nicely. Like, it was, people were complaining about payroll at the all company meetings every Thursday, Friday, that the founders would facilitate. And there were just a lot of errors happening. We had outsourced the process to like a traditional outsourcing firm, and they just weren't really able to handle the complexity of Google. Google tries to be the best company to work for, and so that means a lot of cool programs, perks, benefits for employees that are constantly being innovated upon, and this outsourcer just couldn't really keep up. And so we were charged with finding a new solution that would basically, allow us to adapt with that complexity that is Google and all the different benefits and perks, but maintain more control and more accuracy and timeliness, and basically make employees not ever have to think about their paycheck, right? It just worked. So I ended up being part of that selection team, and then actually project managing the implementation of that new solution for the US population, which was about 10,000 employees at the time. And I literally went from knowing zero about payroll to, at the end of that year, I was, probably the expert at Google about how the US payroll system and process worked. And so that was really a great experience, and probably like the key to where I am today is getting the opportunity to like become an expert in a certain area. And then I parlayed that into more and more roles. So I after that implementation, I became the systems manager for payroll, started looking at systems needs in the other regions like Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pac, LATAM, et cetera. And then eventually I took over all of international operations, which was a great experience in terms of like building an org. It was a team of like 25 people. I had never managed that big of a group. And then finally, about 2 or 3 years ago, everything kind of came full circle when the head of the payroll organization left, and I was able to kind of take over the entire group, and kind of brings back my US payroll scope and responsibility in addition to the international side. And then over time, my leadership team keeps adding more and more scope to our org, I think because we're doing a good job. So took on expense reporting and the Google company card, which we call the G card, processes as well, which have a lot of overlaps with payroll, and took over payroll accounting, which has probably been the biggest stretch for me, because you mentioned that I'm an accounting guru, but I actually don't have a ton of accounting chops or training. So I'm learning a lot in these new areas that are being given to me.
Wow, that's incredible. So like from Stanford, you played volleyball, then consulting, working with like systems, you found your love for them, going to Google. That's a crazy, incredible journey. I really love that. So I know now that, so like you made your way to like kind of the top of payroll, you're managing such a complex system. And as Google has like employees kind of all over the world, could you share how you manage such a huge team and a complex system?
Yeah, it is pretty complex. I would say the payroll process is a lot more complex than most people are aware of. And then yes, just the way we're organized, Google itself is in about 55, 57 countries, depending on the year. And every single one of those countries has completely different rules and regulations around payroll, around how to calculate taxes and pensions and medical deductions and insurance and whatnot. So what we ended up doing is we've employed a network of payroll service providers in each country that provide sort of that local expertise that we don't have within our team. So my team is about, let's say, including expenses and payroll accounting, we're about 60 people now globally, and we're organized in 4 different hubs. So we have a pretty sizable hub here in the Bay Area, probably about 20, 25 people. We also have a big hub in Dublin, Ireland, and some smaller teams in Singapore and Sao Paulo, Brazil. And so we've divvied out some of the oversight of those local providers to those regional teams. And then in the US, we actually manage the system, or at least, we manage it ourselves for the most part. So we also employ kind of another layer of transactional support, which we call our BPO, our business process outsourcing teams. So we have a big center in Krakow, Poland, who services most of our international scope and our time tracking, sales bonus, mobility, some of these more like niche areas within payroll. And then we have another center in Atlanta, Georgia, or Alpharetta, Georgia, that services the UF payroll solution. So it's kind of multiple layers of oversight. You've got like my management team, the Googlers that work for them that are doing a lot of the issue resolution, escalations from our BPO team. And then the BPO team kind of the front line dealing directly with the in-country providers. So it is quite like a matrix kind of structure, but it seems to work.
Yeah, like complex, like you have all these different locations and things, but it helps it stay organized so like different people can like work on different parts of it. So I want to know, like, since you're like managing all of these things and you have to like kind of oversee all of the different countries and all the different hubs, like you were saying, what does like just a day in the life of Lisa look like for your workday kind of?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a lot of meetings. I wish it was fewer meetings, but it's a lot of it's just like keeping in touch with my team, having one-on-ones with all of my managers, mostly once a week with each of them. Sometimes I'll have skip levels with their direct reports. And then we just have a lot of projects going on, a lot of initiatives, transformation when it comes to our systems. And that's where, a lot of my time is spent. It's just sort of helping steer those initiatives, helping with decision making and, raising risks that I'm seeing that are helping problem solve if we're running into issues, or, if it's looking like we're behind plan, how might we tweak the scope or tweak the timeline or add more people, that kind of thing, to try and stay on track, right? So I'd say mostly meetings. I wish I had a little bit more heads down work time to keep up with emails and, other sort of mini projects on my plate. But I think, it's a lot of just talking with the team. And I do actually get a lot of energy out of that. So as much as I complain about getting behind on email, I do, that's kind of what it's all about, is collaboration.
So like collaborating, lots of meetings, but I mean, as long as like they bring you energy, you enjoy it, it's great. So I kind of wanted to know, what do you like most about your jobs? Like you mentioned earlier in your introduction that you really, really loved systems, and that kind of brought you to Google and allowed you to find payroll. So
I do really love operations in general. Like, I've thought about moving to different functions in finance, but I'm really drawn to like just the tangible nature of operations where, you have transactions that need to be managed and processes that always have room for optimization. And then there's always like systems and automation behind that, right? Like that's kind of how you optimize in many cases, is through automation. And so I love systems projects, particularly because it's just so like the progress is so real. Like you can like look and feel and hold on to the actual work that you've put in, right? You can see like if we just refreshed like our payslip user interface for all of the company, it's really rewarding for me to see the before and after and be like, wow, we did that, like, and we're making everyone's life just a tiny bit easier through that innovation, right? And the other thing I really love that I think is maybe a little bit more unique to Google, is that we're really encouraged to kind of think big, and we get a lot of support from leadership in terms of like funding systems projects and initiatives. And so I feel like my team, some of the transformation we're doing right now is actually kind of industry changing. Like we're filling gaps that exist for all of our peer companies when it comes to like multi-country payroll. And to me, that's just really exciting. Like I love going to conferences with other peer company, the payroll directors at the other companies, and being able to share some of the stuff we're working on and just kind of seeing them kind of salivate, wishing they had a similar solution, right? So that's really exciting to me too.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like I agree. Like finding what's rewarding in your work. Like you said, moving from the beginning, seeing it be finished in the end, seeing other companies. Also being able to like be inspired by what you're sharing and just creating innovation, new things. So I know a lot of me, like high schoolers and some of my other peers, we are obsessed with like about colleges and going to the right college, going to the best one. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, how was your experience at Stanford? Like, did it meet your expectations to like the high name it holds?
Yeah, great question. And I feel like my thoughts on like what's a good college have changed a lot like over the years. I think when I was in high school, I thought I had to go to one of these big name schools, or I would have failed or something, right? Like, or I would have a tougher time getting a job or whatnot, right? And I think what I've seen now that I'm in a position of leadership where I'm constantly hiring people, like I actually don't care what school people went to at all. And like Google used to care in the early days, like they would only recruit from certain schools, and now they've completely gotten rid of that because they've realized that there's no correlation between the school you went to and how successful you are, in terms of performance. And so I would just say in general, like there's so many great colleges out there and like you can't go wrong. I think you will find great teachers at any of those universities. And like that's probably something about Stanford is like I did have some amazing teachers that are like, at the forefront of their area. And then I remember I had one math teacher that I was just like, I can't believe this guy is like at Stanford. He like wrote the book, so he was super smart, but like I couldn't understand the book or him when he would lecture, right? It was just like terrible. So it's going to be a mix no matter where you go. And I think it's just important to find the right fit for you. And there could be a lot of factors in that, in terms of like the major that you want to do, or, the future you're thinking about, future career, or even just like which campus did you feel most comfortable at, or the type of people that are, there, et cetera. So for me, it definitely met my expectations. I mean, Stanford's an amazing place, but I do think like you can't go wrong at most of the great universities all around the states. And that's what I'm telling my kids, because I know now that it's like so impossible to get into Stanford. I don't want them to get their hopes up and be devastated, because I think they could be happy at a lot of different places.
Yeah, so it's not like necessarily going to the biggest name, but more what's like a good fit for you and where you think you'll succeed the most. So
Exactly.
I know that like you played volleyball while you were at Stanford actually, and I cannot believe like how you're able to manage that both. So could you share how you managed your college work while being a volleyball athlete?
Yeah, I guess it felt very normal because I had been doing that all through high school too, and all of my teammates were facing the same challenges, and so We were strategic about taking fewer units during season because that's when we would be traveling a lot and maybe missing more class. And then you kind of bulk up on units in the winter and spring seasons. But yeah, it's just, time management. It's all the stuff you've heard over and over. Like anytime you're involved in extracurriculars, you're having to kind of like be disciplined, kind of plan out your day. You know that like you're going to be at practice from 4 to 7 every day or something. So you have to squeeze in, writing papers or doing problem sets or whatever in the other hours. And you probably get a lot less sleep in college than you're used to. Maybe not. High school is pretty hard these days, but yeah, I think it all becomes manageable. I think everyone kind of has extracurriculars going on. So, and then there is a lot of downtime, like even when we're in season and we're traveling, there's a lot of like waiting around, for like you travel on a Wednesday night to play a Thursday night game. You might have like half of Thursday to kind of do homework and catch up on stuff. So, and I think now with online classes, and it's probably so much easier for the athletes now than it was for us. I bet it's a lot more manageable because they can kind of dial into class from the road and stuff.
Yeah, so it's just like kind of staying organized, time management, and like it's like you said, so not completely volleyball. Like you still have like those extra spaces for like time where you can do your work. So just managing it all together. And then I wanted to ask one last question before we let the audience ask some questions. And that is, how did you decide that economics was what you wanted to major in?
Yeah, it's a good question. I knew I wanted to do business of some sort. And that's like a really vague term, but I literally didn't know more than that. I just knew that was kind of what I was drawn to. And Stanford actually is a liberal arts school, so they don't have a business degree. They don't have accounting or tax or any of the like more practical finance degrees that you could take. And so I was kind of choosing between like the two closest were economics and management science or industrial engineering was kind of the other option. And I was very intimidated by the idea of engineering because I think I just had never been exposed to it. It's not like today where, like my kids are getting exposed to engineering and, computer science and stuff in like first grade. I had not really been, I was just scared of that word, honestly. I didn't know what it meant. And so I went with economics. Looking back, I actually regret that. I wish economics is a very like theoretical social science kind of, as opposed to, I think I would have liked something a little bit more tangible, like industrial engineering. So if I had to do it again, I would do that. It also opens up more doors from a career perspective, at least at Google, if you have that engineering degree, because you've been kind of trained in, a specific way of thinking about problems and whatnot. And so like product management is a career at Google that you can't even apply for unless you have an engineering degree. So that would be my advice to folks that are kind of interested. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from economics. It was interesting, and like I enjoyed like the microeconomics courses the most because they were the most practical, where you're doing like case studies on certain companies and whatnot. But yeah, some of the more theoretical social science stuff, like I feel like I crammed a lot and didn't retain a lot of that knowledge, and I don't use it barely at all today.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. That's like if you're into like those type of economics, like more humanitarian things, like that's probably better. But if you want to like do project management, like you said, maybe like kind of engineering, it's good to have like different perspectives and know like what you kind of want to do. So then I'm gonna open it up to the questions now. So if you are thinking about going into economics and finance, what is some of your advice for what we can do now and tips that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think one thing, so my dad was actually a finance guy, and I never really asked him about his job. Like I think I would have benefited a lot from just like understanding more what he was doing. He would always try to get me to read like the Wall Street Journal or, some more like business type magazines. And I do think that would have helped a lot in terms of like just building up kind of more of a general knowledge. Are you asked, sorry, was the question what to do now while you're in high school, or is it in preparation for a major in finance or economics?
Like advice of like what students can do while they're in high school, kind of like if they're thinking about going into economics.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think you'll be successful without preparing at all. Like, at least that was my experience is, you start with Econ 1 and you learn the basics. So I don't know that you necessarily need to do a lot of prep. I would just like really explore whether that topic is what you're passionate about, so that you don't like waste too much time if it ends up not being the right one for you. To me, like the skills that I really built in high school that came in handy were probably writing, which is kind of maybe not that intuitive for an econ degree, but like you do a lot of papers, both in just like the core classes that everyone has to take, the requirements just to graduate. You do a lot of writing, but also in econ, you're writing a lot of papers. And I felt like that was probably the most valuable skill that I took into college. And definitely it's probably one that I use the most now. Like having good like written communication skills really comes in handy in a business environment, because you're always responding to emails and addressing your team via email, et cetera. It's just a more scalable way of communicating. And so I would say invest in your writing skills. Honestly, if like for me, just doing sports, I think was really helpful. Or any extracurricular, I think, where you're getting involved, you're learning to be a good teammate, you're learning to be a leader. Those are all like just general skills that I think have helped me through college and beyond.
Yeah, so kind of like getting involved, like keep practice your writing, practice like communicating with your writing, and then like extracurriculars and sports to help you be a leader, like teammates, teamwork, all of that. Well, it's good, it'll come in handy later
Yeah,
on.
definitely.
Yeah. So next question is, what do you think makes a good leader?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I look for in a leader is that they're authentic. So they're like very true to themselves. It doesn't seem fake, like they're playing the role of a leader. They're just being themselves. And their, passion and energy and empathy should hopefully just come out naturally, right? I think it does really help if you are kind of a people person, like if you're, comfortable communicating to a large group, and also just those one-on-one meetings where you're just, like I said, empathy, I think, is a big one. Like I always tell new managers, the most important thing you can do is treat people the way you would want your manager to treat you. Like think about the good managers you've had and what are some of the things that you don't want to imitate them, because that might not be authentic, but like are there behaviors or things they did, ways that they invested in you that you appreciated, right? And essentially, like, anytime an employee comes to me with a question or a problem or a dilemma or whatever, I'm always just trying to think about like if this were me, how would I want to be treated?
Yeah, so kind of like being authentic, but having that empathy aspect as well. Kind of, that's something that people don't always hear. Like, you have to be authentic to be a leader. Like, don't always go looking at someone who you want to be and try to copy everything that they do, because it has to come from you. Otherwise, it's not going to seem as genuine and real in being a leader.
And then I would say like the one other thing that we look for when we're kind of, advancing folks to higher and higher levels is really like vision. And what I mean by that is like at the lower levels, it's very common for your manager to kind of give you tasks or give you an objective, and you have to kind of figure out how to meet that objective. And as you get more and more senior, you will just be given kind of an area to own, and you have to kind of build the roadmap for what to do in that area, right? And kind of chart the course. And so I think that's also really important in a leader, is someone that can kind of step back, see the big picture. It helps, I think, like for me, it's helped that I'm like a very competitive person. So I always want to be the best. I always want our team to be the best. And that's sort of where you hear me saying, like, we're building technology that, maybe some other companies haven't even thought about yet or whatever. Like, I like to have those like really ambitious dreams for the team, which I think actually gets people pretty motivated. They don't want to come and just like do payroll at a company, right? They want to like optimize process. They want to build systems. They want to change the industry. And so I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, so like not just like you said, going to payroll, but like changing the industry, having those big ambitious goals. That's great. And so we just have time for one more question. Could you just briefly share your volleyball journey and passion with us?
Yeah, so I started playing volleyball probably in like 7th grade, I think. I actually got cut from the first team I tried out from, which was devastating. And my best friend made it, and we had gone to the tryout together, and it was like so sad for me. So I got really lucky that my parents felt bad for me and like called around to all the clubs in the area and tried to find like, could we put together a team of rejects in some way? And what's amazing about that first team that I was on is like we were all people that had gotten rejected from the various teams or clubs in the area. And I want to say like half of that team ended up playing in college. Like we just got really lucky with an amazing coach. And it just goes to show, like, the coaches don't always know when they're selecting teams who has the potential to be great, right? But yeah, I played all through high school for a local club team, and ended up getting, a lot of interest from various college coaches. And I was kind of a unicorn back then because I was a really tall setter, which is the position that typically shorter players. And so a lot of the coaches liked the idea of having like a big blocker that could also set. And yeah, so I ended up, I chose amongst a bunch of different great schools. I think what was key for me in my selection process was taking visits to the different schools and meeting with the teams and seeing the campuses and just getting kind of a gut feel of where I felt most at home. And Stanford is actually kind of a surprise to me that they came out on top, because I had really, for some reason, had UCLA like higher in my mind. Like I wanted to go a little bit further from home because I grew up in this area, but ended up with Stanford. And sort of all through high school, I had been doing like the junior national team stuff. And then, so it was kind of in the pipeline, and basically all the summers and in between my college years, I would go spend time with the national team. So originally in San Diego, as they were training for the Olympics. I didn't make the 96 Olympic team, but that was kind of expected because I was still in college and couldn't train with them full time. So it was awesome just to get to play with all those girls that did go. And then the plan was, as soon as I graduated in 98, I was going to go play full time, which I did. I moved to Colorado Springs, where we have the Olympic Training Center, and traveled with the team and played with them. But I was still kind of nursing an injury that I suffered in college my senior year, and had to get a couple knee surgeries. And at some point, it just felt like it wasn't worth it anymore, to kind of go through all the pain and rehab. And, you spend kind of 4 years training for this 1-2-week tournament, which is the Olympics. That's kind of like the pinnacle of indoor volleyball. And, I couldn't get my head around, like, is it really worth it to do all of this for just those 2 weeks? Which, I ended up quitting and getting married and starting my career. So all of those things, like, I wouldn't change that. But there was a point where I kind of regretted not playing longer. I think I just missed the sport so much at one point that I was like, should I make a comeback? But I ended up not doing so. So now I'm kind of living vicariously through my daughter, who's also playing volleyball, and my son plays soccer, and I'm still staying very active in the Stanford volleyball community. I'm very close friends with the coaching staff there, and try as much as I can to go to all of their home games and support them in whatever way they want.
Yeah, that's such a great journey, like from high school to Stanford, almost like going to the Olympics. I didn't even know that. That's really cool. But yeah, great journey. I think we're running a bit over time, so I don't think we have more time for questions. But thank you so much for your time today. I definitely learned so much about like your field and your work, and all the insights will definitely help me and all of our audience become more successful in the future.
It was my pleasure. Happy to help you guys.
Yep, and viewers, thank you so much for watching and interacting as always. So I just wanted to inform you once again that our last speaker for this series will be Derek Hong next week, and he will go over his experience as a Nike lead product engineer and Boeing's design engineer. So you can register with that with the link in the chat. And yeah, so Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today, and viewers, I'll see you all next week. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.